Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya Cantlow, and I'm the acting counsel to Brooklyn Borough President Eric L. Adams, and I'd like to welcome you to Borough Hall. To my right, I have Ina Gusenfeld, who is the Land Use Coordinator, and to my left is Richard Barrick, who is the Land Use Director. There are 4 items on the agenda this evening. Please note that this hearing is being recorded to comply with the public law for transparency. It will be available for viewing on Borough President Adams' website, brooklyn-usa.org, or on the One Brooklyn channel on YouTube. Again, web viewers may submit timely comments to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov for Borough President Adams' consideration. Please call the first item and let us begin.
Calendar item number 1, 190083ZRK, 190084ZSK, 190085ZSK.
These applications submitted by North 13 Holdings LLC pursuant to sections 197-C and 201 of the City Charter for the following land use actions: a zoning resolution text amendment to designate a section of a block between North 13th and North 14th Streets on the east side of Wythe Avenue as a new industrial business incentive area, a special permit pursuant to ZR Section 74-96 to utilize the maximum permitted community facility floor area ratio for specific commercial, industrial, and manufacturing uses, and allow an adjustment in the underlying height and setback regulations, as well as a special permit to modify the accessory parking and loading berth requirements for the development site. Such actions would facilitate the development of a 7-story commercial building within an M1-2 district in Brooklyn Community District 1. The building would contain a mix of industrial, office, and retail uses with a total floor area of approximately 60,000 square feet. The proposed development would provide 1 loading berth and no off-street parking. Community Board 1 voted to approve this application on December 11, 2018. Would Richard Lobell, the representative for this application, please state your name for the record and present the application?
Thank you, Richard Lobell of Sheldon Lobell PC for the applicants. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm joined tonight by Nick Liberis, the project architect, as well as Fan Baton from our office. And we're here tonight to present to the Brooklyn Borough President's office the application for 103 North 13th Street, which involves 3 actions. The first is an amendment to the text of the IBIA to allow it to incorporate the property. The second being 2 special permits, which affect both use and bulk of the property, as well as parking. So, by way of background, of course, this is generated by the special permit, which was created pursuant to the application by 25 Kent, of course, which is well known to this office. But in accordance with that special permit and the text amendments thereto, while there were 12 or portions of 12 blocks that were included in the industrial business incentive area pursuant to both city planning and council action, that was reduced just to the block of 25 Kent. So now, prior to making application for any of these special permits, pursuant to section 7496 and the following sections, one is required to actually amend the IBI text, which we are doing today. So you can see the area that's highlighted in the black dotted lines. This is to allow for the IBIA text to apply to our block. This is a boundary district which is drawn 250 feet east of Wythe Avenue to include all or parts of 6 lots. Our lot is listed as the gray lot highlighted in red to the southeast portion of the black dotted area. So you can see from the tax map that this block frontage has approximately 125 feet. It's 100 feet deep for a total lot area of 12,500 square feet. And here are some pictures of the area. The area is dominated by the William Vale Hotel across North 13th Street. The property itself is a low-lying property, which would currently be redeveloped in accordance with the proposal. So the proposal involves, as we said, the IBIA text amendment. It also involves for use in bulk waivers as well as parking and loading berth waivers. The use in bulk waivers would, of course, allow for the application of the full 4.8 FAR, which would be permitted as of right under the M12 zoning district, but to allow that, of course, to be occupied by the mix of uses permitted pursuant to the special permit. Specifically here, this would allow for ground floor retail. This would allow for a second story for industrial uses, and would allow for office uses on the levels above the second story. What this does in accordance with the special permit is it allows for a rather well-developed, contiguous, roughly 10,000 square feet of floor area for these required industrial uses, and would allow, of course, for the ground floor retail in association with the building and the application. The parking waiver here, which was approved by the community board, would allow the parking to be reduced to zero. The current parking demand would fall somewhere around 139 spaces. However, this lot is relatively small, and so the conversation with the community board was with regards to the difficulty in actually fitting in the required parking spaces on a lot of this area, as well as the availability of parking within the area of the premises. The community board was satisfied after two land use hearings and one land use hearing and two full board hearings that these conditions in the site were relatively unique, and that they were accepting of the parking waiver at this property. Of course, there would still be one loading berth provided for the industrial uses. So I'd actually hand the microphone over to Nick Liberos, who would discuss some of the particulars with regards to the height and bulk of the proposed building.
Hi. So the building is 95 feet high and 7 stories high. We have a setback at the 7th floor, you can see over here. We have a full transparent street wall per the ZR requirements. The first floor will be retail, and we have a loading berth, and we have an office separate lobby over here all the way to the east at the end over here. And this is the main access for the light manufacturing floor, which is at the 2nd floor. And we also have four floors of office space. The office floors range from 14.5 to 15.5 feet clear for the ceilings. Out of 4.8 total FAR, we have 0.8 total for the light manufacturing, which comes out to be about 10,000 square feet on the 12,500 square foot site. We have an over supply of bike parking, and as Rich said, we have zero spaces for car parking. Right now, the only outside space is this setback space on the 7th floor over here, and we were trying to not be slavishly contextual with this. You know, we are using a palette of like locally found materials, mainly brick, and we think it'll be a nice addition to the neighborhood once it comes in. Thank you.
And just to touch back upon the parking for a moment, one of the compelling factors for the community board was while there was a required parking generated by the site of approximately 139 spaces, that was that is pursuant to the rather restrictive M12 rules as tempered by the special permit. So the actual demand, as was demonstrated through parking studies, was roughly 27 to 28 spaces. And so the overage of parking spaces in the area was seen as a determining factor to the community board in allowing us to proceed with the proposed design. And the team is happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we have a few questions. So the first question, the community board's recommendation included having rents for the required industrial use space to not exceed 80% of area rent for manufacturing uses. This is generally consistent with the operations provided by the area's two industrial nonprofits, Evergreen and GMDC. What consideration has been given to complying with this recommendation?
So the applicant had the opportunity to sit down with Evergreen prior to entering ULURP. It was very productive meeting. And one of the things that Evergreen discussed was the fact that there's a current compelling need for much of this space, and the applicant here is committed to producing this available square footage, particularly for the industrial uses, as quickly as possible. Having said that, Evergreen, we did discuss with them the potential for this reduced rent for the industrial space. I think it's something that the applicant is open to, but I think it's something that we would kind of look into further as we proceed towards the hopeful approval of the special permit.
Okay, and the second question, Borough President Adams recognizes that craft food and beverage production is a growing manufacturing sector in Brooklyn, but that there is a need to protect and provide for more traditional manufacturers. Food and beverage manufacturers have the potential to set up accessory retail operations on the premises to enhance revenues, which would allow such businesses to pay higher rents. To what extent does the zoning permit or preclude accessory retail operations within the defined required industrial use floor area?
So having been involved in other land use applications where commercial use was implicated at the Brooklyn Borough President's office, we're well aware of the preference that the office has with regards to accessory use. And the fact that to the extent that there is a close separation between the as-of-right industrial use versus the accessory retail use, that it's the Brooklyn Borough President's preference to reduce that accessory use. I think it's something which we've discussed internally, and while we feel that the 10% number is relatively low, I think it's something that, having just introduced it to the applicant, it's definitely something that they're willing to work with and to discuss further. This is an applicant who has prior experience in the area, and when we sat down with Evergreen, we already talked about some other industrial businesses that may even take an interest in the site from its current collection of available users and lessees. So again, I think that that we understand the issue. We're hopeful that we can come close to accommodating the percentage, but given the fact that we are in ULURP and we don't have a definite application and don't have a definite approval, it's not something where we've particularly identified the applicants who would be using the space. So that's kind of where we sit right now.
So the next question deals with sustainable and renewable energy. It is Borough President Adams' policy to promote the use of sustainable and renewable energy resources focused on advancing a sustainable future in Brooklyn. It is also Borough President Adams' policy to promote practices to retain stormwater runoff. What consideration has been given, possibly in cooperation with the Department of Environmental Protection, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, NYSERDA, or NYPA, towards incorporating passive house design, wind turbines, solar panels, blue-green or white roof covering, and/or rain gardens?
Nick Laberis. We have a full roof retention capacity up on this roof. We do not have a retention tank by code now. You have to have such a facility, so we have it. As you might know, also the energy code recently has become much more restrictive, so we meet all of those criteria also. Most notably with all the glazing that we have, there's extremely high solar heat gain coefficients and like values for the glass, and we also have an intensive, extensive green roof system, which is comprised of a sedum over a light like planting soil matrix, which itself is over the heavily insulated roof. So we retain water, and we also have this very light green roof system over the entire roof of the building.
Final question deals with good quality jobs. It is the Borough President's policy to maximize good quality jobs for Brooklynites. Please outline what steps will be taken to ensure the inclusion and participation of minority and women-owned business enterprises and local business enterprises in the process of construction on this site.
So we discussed this with the applicant today. The applicant currently, having developed other projects, within the area and within Brooklyn generally, engages MBWE contractors on a regular basis. We actually discussed the extensive construction funds that are allocated to subcontractors on a current basis. So I think this is something which they are actively pursuing, that they would be happy to pursue going forward. I know that they have a lot of experience in this area. We talked about some of the specific subcontractors in Brooklyn who they do utilize, both MBWE as well as local business enterprises. So again, we understand the preference towards local hiring as well as a preference towards MBWE, and I'm actually fairly certain that that as we move forward, we can commit to being engaged and to be able to employ MBWE contracting for the site.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
So at this time,
Have any speakers for
yeah,
the item?
none? No speakers? Okay, there are no speakers for this.
So you just have to verify if anybody in the audience is
Okay.
on this item.
Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item who has not submitted a speaker slip?
Okay, calendar item number 1 is closed. Calendar item number 2, 190053, ZMK, 190054, ZRK.
These applications submitted by 1640 Flatbush Owner LLC pursuant to Sections 197-C and 201 of the City Charter for zoning map amendments to rezone from C82 and R6 districts to a AC4-4D district, the northwest corner of a property at the intersection of Aurelia Court and Flatbush Avenue to within 200 feet of East 31st Street, and a rezone from part of a 68-2 district to R6 portions of 2 blocks bordering the Long Island Railroad, Bay Ridge Division, between Nostrand Avenue and East 31st Street. The applicant also seeks a zoning text amendment to designate the site a mandatory inclusionary housing area. Such actions would facilitate the development of a 13-story mixed-use building containing 114 dwelling units with approximately 34 affordable to households at an average of 80% of area median income, according to MIH Option 2, and approximately 30,000 square feet of retail uses on the first 2 floors, as well as accessory parking for 40 vehicles in Brooklyn Community District 14. Community Board 14 voted to approve this application on December 10th, 2018 with conditions. Would Daniel Eggers, the representative for this application, please state your name for the record and present the application?
Hi, good evening. Dan Eggers from Greenberg Trarg, land use attorney representing the owner of 1640 Flatbush Avenue. As mentioned, we're before you tonight for a rezoning application that would facilitate the development of a 13-story plus cellar building with commercial use on the lower 2 floors and residential above that would contain up to 34 permanently affordable housing units subject to MIH. As you can see in the photos, the site up until last year was occupied by a BP gas station. It is on the west side of Flatbush Avenue at Aurelia Court, directly south of the Triangle Junction Shopping Center. The site is approximately 18,000 square feet. 15,000 square feet is in a C82 zoning district that does not allow residential use. The remaining 3,000 square feet is in an R6 residential district. These districts allow a maximum of 4.8 FAR and have no maximum building height limit. Our proposal would rezone the entire site to a C4-4D district subject to mandatory inclusionary housing. So residential use would be permitted on the entire site. It's an R8A residential equivalent. Also, at the request of the Department of City Planning, the C82 district that is currently on the adjacent 2 lots would be rezoned to an R6 district so that those 2 lots would be uniformly R6, which would match their residential use. The C4-4D district allows 7.2 FAR. That's 2.4 FAR more than the 4.8 FAR allowed by current zoning, and it has a 145-foot or 14-story building height limit for buildings with on-site affordable and a qualifying ground floor, such as this one would be. Since the site is about 18,000 square feet, approximately 130,000 square feet of floor area would be permitted. And here's a rendering showing a view of the proposed building from Aurelia Court. If the rezoning were approved, our client is proposing to develop a 13-story building that would have 130,000 zoning square feet, built to 7.2 FAR, with about 30,000 square feet on the ground floor and the second floor. That's about 1.7 commercial FAR, 3.4 commercial FAR is allowed, and about 100,000 square feet of residential floor area. The ULURP application proposes that the residential floor area would include 30% as affordable pursuant to MIH option 2. There would be approximately 114 total units, so under option 2 there would be 80 market rate and 34 affordable. As you know, MIH is determined by the council, and council member Williams has requested option 1 plus potentially deeper levels of affordability. MIH option 1 requires that 25% of the residential floor area be affordable to households averaging 60% of area median income. If option 1 is used, then there would be about 30 permanently affordable housing units. And we look forward to continuing discussions with Councilmember Williams to finalize the MIH component of the project should it be approved. Based on conversations with the council member and the Department of City Planning, the 13-story portion of the building has been massed along Flatbush Avenue to be in context with the 20-story Phil Howard building across the street, which are seen in the background of this rendering. And this is a rendering of the proposed building from Flatbush Avenue. As you can see, the 13-story portion is along Flatbush. There is a shallow 7-story portion along Aurelia Court, which is intended to provide a transition from the neighboring mid-rise 6-story plus basement buildings, including the immediately adjacent building at 3111 Aurelia Court. And here is a site plan. I don't know how well you can see it, but the 7-story portion is only about 35 feet deep. The rest of the building along its western lot line is 1 or 2 stories, and the 13-story portion is at least 30 feet from its lot line, and this distance increases due to the diagonal configuration. The buildings would fully comply with the C4-4D regulations. The 7-story, 80-foot tall base would comply with the 60-foot minimum and 105-foot maximum base heights. The required 15-foot setback would be provided from Aurelia Court, a narrow street, and a 10-foot setback would be provided from Flatbush Avenue, a wide street. And the building would rise to a total height of 13 stories and 142 feet in compliance with the 14-story and 145-foot building height limit. Regarding parking, zoning requires parking to be provided for 50% of the market rate units. Because the site is in a transit zone, no parking is required by zoning for the affordable units. For the commercial use, 1 space is required for every 1,000 square feet of floor area, but this requirement is waived if no more than 40 spaces are required. Here, there would be about 30,000 square feet of commercial floor area, so the parking requirement for the commercial use would be waived. So if there are about 80 market rate units, there would be a requirement that 40 spaces be provided, and we're proposing to provide those spaces on a single below grade level on stackers. It would be attended parking. We also know that this community is underserved by parks and open space. The building would include about 2,800 square feet of recreation space that would be available to all building residents. We believe there's a sound land use rationale for the rezoning. In view of the surrounding residential use, the access to mass transit, and the need for housing, this site is suited for residential use. And given its location on Flatbush Avenue, we do believe this is a site where added density is appropriate. The 7.2 maximum FAR would be 2.4 FAR more than the 4.8 FAR currently permitted, and would be more in line with the 6.5 FAR that is currently allowed in the C8-4 district that is directly to the north. And the building would be in context, as its 13 stories would be less than the 20 stories of the Philip Howard buildings. So for the reasons discussed, I respectfully request the Borough President's favorable recommendation and welcome any questions.
We have a few questions. So the first question, concerns were raised at the Community Board's public hearing regarding the possibility of resulting traffic congestion, particularly from uses occupying the commercial floors as well as shadows stemming from the proposed height of the building, which might adversely impact the residents of Philip Howard houses across Flatbush Avenue. Please address those expressed concerns.
Certainly. So and my client can speak more to what may occupy the lower two floors, the commercial space, but we believe that this would not be what's known as destination retail, where people would be coming from elsewhere and driving their cars and parking in order to use this use. So we don't envision people doing that. And I would also point out that under the current zoning, 2 stories of retail is permitted. So the requested zoning change here is not affecting a change from what could take place currently with respect to parking for a particular commercial use that could occupy the site. And as for shadows, I do want to spend a minute here because there were concerns raised at the Community Board, and we weren't able to present our findings there in a public forum, and here we are in a public forum, so I would like to take a minute to walk everyone through what the shadow study has found. I'll try to be brief. So no shadow study was required by the project's EAS because there are no what's known as sunlight-sensitive resources within the maximum radius of a shadow that could be cast by the building. And a sunlight-sensitive resource, for instance, is a stained glass window on a church or an ornate element of an historic building that's enhanced by sunlight or natural resources. So there wasn't a shadow study required by the EAS, but because the community asked for one was performed that we're going to discuss right now. So the requested shadow study shows the effects of the project's incremental shadows, and that means new shadows that would be generated by the project that would not overlap with existing shadows, in particular with respect to the Philip Howard building and the building immediately adjacent to the west at 3111 Aurelia Court. In sum, what the study found was that approximately the upper half of the west-facing facade of Philip Howard would experience no incremental shadow at any time. In the winter, when shadows are the longest, no incremental shadow would be cast on Philip Howard until early afternoon. The shadow would remain limited in size throughout the afternoon, shading approximately 2% at 1:30 p.m., which is shown in this figure. The area I just pointed out is that 2%. And it would increase to about 15% around 3 p.m. In the spring and fall, there'd be no incremental shadow cast on Philip Howard until mid-afternoon, so it's getting later in the day. The incremental shadow would move into the lower corner of the west facade at about 2:30 p.m. There you see it again, the lower corner. And then it would cover approximately 10% of the west facade at 4 p.m. and approximately 25% at 5:30 p.m. It's shown there. So the entire southern portion is not covered in any incremental shadow. And in the summer, the incremental shadow would not reach Philip Howard until late afternoon. So once again, you see this shadow moving onto the lower portion. This is at 5:30 p.m. About 2% is covered, the very lower portion of the building. And it would increase to about 15% at 7 p.m. As for 3111 Aurelia Court, it's directly adjacent to the building, and it's to its west, so as one would expect when the sun rises in the morning in the east, a shadow would be cast, and much of the east-facing facade would be covered in incremental shadow for the morning throughout the year. and a portion of the south-facing facade would experience incremental shadow in the early morning during the spring, summer, and fall, but not the winter. And what I would point out is that under current zoning, as I mentioned before, there is no building height limit. So a building as tall as the one that is proposed could be constructed currently. It would not be masked the same way because less FAR is permitted. So it wouldn't cast exactly the same shadow that is projected here, but it would cast a shadow. And I think that's something that's important to mention as well. So I hope that addresses the concerns raised regarding shadows.
It does. Thank you. So the next question, and I know you addressed some of this in your presentation, deals with the intended affordable housing units. So this is sort of like a three-part question. First question is, what is the qualifying income range for prospective households based on household size? Second part is, what are the anticipated rents based on the number of bedrooms? And the third part is, what is the distribution of units by bedroom size?
Sure. So if MIH option 1 applies, that requires 25% of the residential floor area be provided as affordable housing for households averaging 60% of area median income. And within that 25%, 10% has to be affordable for households averaging 40% of area median income. And there can be no more than 3 bands. So the qualifying income is based on family size. So for instance, in the 40% band, a family size of 1 would be an income of about $29,000 a year. And rents are set proportionally to that by HPD. There's some leeway, but not a whole lot. So for instance, a 1-bedroom in the 40% AMI band would be about $667. As for the unit mix, our client is still in the early stages of development process. Of course, the building hasn't been thoroughly designed because that would be presumptuous. We don't know what's going to be approved. But for instance, one potential mix would be about 25% of the affordable units as 1-bedrooms, about 50% as 2s, and about 20% as 3s. And that would more or less be proportional to the mix of the market rate units.
The next question deals with community concerns regarding displacement and prevalence of rent burden households. Please identify what marketing strategies, such as designating one of this community's affordable housing nonprofits as the affordable housing administering agent, would be used in the tenant selection process in order to ensure the highest level of participation from Community District 14, especially those that are rent burdened or at risk of displacement.
Sure. And in fact, the applicant intends to work with an affordable housing administering agent to make best efforts so that about 50% at least of the affordable units is leased to residents of the community to the extent that would be permitted by HPD guidelines, and to engage the community in a financial literacy campaign where people would be able to be made aware of the availability of and the process of applying for the affordable housing units. And in fact, our client has had advanced discussions with Brissa Builders, which is based a little further down Flatbush Avenue from the project site. It's locally based, the administering agent serving as the administering agent for the project.
Just clarity, so Brissa Builders, which is a construction and development firm, I've not heard of them in the role of an administering agent, so if you could clarify that more.
They have made clear to us that they do serve as an administering agent for an affordable housing component of a project.
Fourth question, what consideration has been given to providing affordable community facility space for local arts and cultural nonprofit organizations?
Certainly, and to answer that question, I'm going to turn it over to Harry Satomer, who's with me tonight representing ownership.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
We have engaged in the early process of identifying retailers and users for the first and second floor of the project. Of course, it's very early on in that process, particularly because retailers and users of that first and second floor space would like to really see an approval before they want to start to spend the time and money laying out the space and making sure it works for them. But we're prepared to work with the community to identify users for that space that we think are well suited for the community and not just the developer. Thank you.
So again, the question was not so much about local retailers, but also about the local arts and cultural nonprofit organizations in the area. So if you could speak to that as well.
Sure. So we haven't had advanced dialogue with any of those types of users yet. I can say that we've engaged with Brooklyn College, the BID, and other community organizations that we think will help identify arts and local groups that may be a well-suited option for that space. But I can't say that we've had any direct conversations with the users that you just identified yet. But we certainly will look to do that in the future. Hopefully that answers the question.
So the next question deals with renewable and sustainable energy. It is Borough President Adams' policy to promote the use of sustainable and renewable energy resources focused on advancing a sustainable future in Brooklyn. It is also Borough President Adams' policy to promote the practices to retain stormwater runoff. What consideration has been given, possibly in cooperation with the Department of Environmental Protection, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, NYSERDA or NYPA, towards incorporating passive house design, solar panels, wind turbines, blue, green, or white roof covering, and/or DEP rain gardens?
Certainly, and to answer that question, I'm going to turn the mic over to the project architect.
Hi, good evening.
Just state your name.
My name is Hayek Arostamian with S9 Architects. And the project, because of the MIH component, will have to be certified by the Enterprise Green Communities, which is essentially a LEED equivalent, but it's not exactly the same because a different agency will be governing and approving the process, and it has all the sustainable major components you just mentioned. So our understanding that it will be designed, developed, and operated in an environmentally sustainable manner, and measures will be considered to retain water, to provide high efficiency irrigation system for the green roofs for the project, high efficiency water fixtures, utility submetering. The envelope will be designed and modeled before design to ensure energy efficiency. Also, sorry. So yeah, I think that there are mandatory points that will have to be met, and also 35 optional points that will have to be chosen to meet all the green requirements.
So outside of the building itself, the rain gardens are within the public realm. So if you could speak to the idea of incorporating the DEP rain gardens along the perimeter of the site.
The site will be occupying the entire footprint of the property, so no water will be, all the water will be retained within the building.
Understood, but we're talking about something different. We're talking about within the sidewalk area or within the nearby roadbed, the idea of introducing the rain gardens, otherwise known as bioswales, into the construction of the project. So it's not the building itself, it's the related public realm that when you do your builder's pavement plan, that you have an opportunity to do something in this realm.
Well, it is certainly something will have to be discussed with developer and consider for the sake of the project. Right now, nothing has been designed yet, and if it's required, it will be met, and if it's...
Again, it's not a requirement, it's a way to go above and beyond towards...
Yes, absolutely. I think developer will be considering to take measures above and beyond to assure sustainability.
Okay, and the final question deals with good quality jobs. Please outline what steps will be taken to ensure the inclusion and participation of minority and women-owned business enterprises and local business enterprises in the process of construction on this site.
Sure, thank you. Two-part response to that. With respect to construction, we always set targets throughout our entire organization for MWBE. We certainly do plan to set a target for this project and look to fulfill that project. With respect to the operations of the project, we will be working with 32BJ for this project, and we've committed to them. And again, we are committed to MWB employment, and we'll set targets for the project going forward.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you. So the first speaker, Arlene Charles.
Thank you. Good evening. I do not live in Philip Howard. However, I'm right on the perimeter, and I'm representing the Block Association on New York Avenue between Glenwood and H. And these are our concerns with this development, as well as other what we're calling overdevelopment in the area. So I'm going to start with the destination retail that the gentleman mentioned. I live there, and I see what happens right on our block because I'm so close to Avenue H. People come from Long Island. They come from Far Rockaway. They come from Canarsie. And whether they're going to shop at Target, which is right on the corner, or they're going downtown, they block our driveways because there is a lack of parking already in that area. So that's one of the concerns that my block has, is that we will get even more bombarded with further development in the area, because we also have development on our block with no parking. There is traffic and accidents 2 blocks from us, which is 2 blocks from this development by Target on a regular basis. There was one up to last night. Big piece of a car when you're passing this morning. So the congestion is a concern. The other concern is, again, parking. I know it says that for this development, it requires 50% parking for 50% of the units, but that is still not enough because we are already under sufficient with parking. And then I'll go to the subway. So the subway is very crowded. When a train comes in and you get on it and it leaves, within less than 60 seconds, the platform is crowded because, as you know, that Flatbush Junction subway is two tracks, and it's very small. And so it's very hard to even walk on that platform as it is. Sometimes it's even dangerous. So with this type of a development, bringing more people in the area, and of course with reduced parking, that subway is going to get even more crowded. And then the last thing I have in my notes is that the homeowners on my block, they are concerned about our taxes going up with all of this construction and rezoning that's going on in the area. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Stephen Yearwood.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Stephen Yearwood, and I work at Clinton Hill Cooperatives. And I've been a member of 32BJ for 21 years. I'm here tonight on behalf of my union to express our support for SL Green Affiliates project at 1640 Flatbush. 32BJ is the largest property service union in the country. We represent over 80,000 members across New York City. Members like myself clean and maintain buildings like one being discussed tonight. 32BJ and SL Green have a strong relationship and a track record of partnership at buildings across New York City. We are happy to report that we have been in productive conversation with SL Green regarding future building service jobs at this site, and they have made a commitment to provide good jobs that pay family sustaining wages. We estimate that the project planned for 1640 Flatbush will generate 6 building service jobs, and we believe that they could provide an important economic opportunity for members of the surrounding community. We urge you to support this project. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak that has not submitted a speaker slip? Do you have a slip? Do you have an extra one for her to fill in?
Yes, please. You can fill it out after you speak.
Hi, everyone. My name is Desiree Rucker, and I am a Philip Howard tenant. I've lived in the building for 30 years. And I, too, am concerned about the development because of the density of the neighborhood. It's just becoming more and more crowded, more and more commercial, not as residential as it once was. So we would ask that SL Green consider in their design something to sort of make because it looks very utilitarian, and I don't know if that's because you're factoring in the mandatory inclusionary housing or whatever it's called. But we would like for any development that comes to our neighborhood to add value in the sense of some aesthetic, and not just maybe a backyard behind the house behind the building for the tenants, but to make us feel welcome when we're walking past the building, that, you know, this is not just affordable housing being put up and unfortunately you're it. Okay, so, you know, it looked a little bricky, a little institutional, I'm just saying, okay? And yes, the parking is a problem because people in Philip Howard don't have enough parking. They drive around for hours sometimes at night looking for a space. And people who come to shop at Target and Home Goods, they also park in the parking that's TD Bank, and they get their cars towed. It's sort of like a scam that takes place. So, you know, I'm just telling you because a lot of folks from your building will end up in the, you know, caught in the snare of that. So anyway, you know, we welcome the, you know, growth and development in our community. We, you know, we really want to continue to get better. Like I said, I've been there 30 years, and I think on some levels, you know, we resisted Target. We were hoping we were getting a Red Lobster, but yeah, we did. We wanted Red Lobster. Right. But, you know, we would really like to say, please consider our opinions, because, you know, the public forum, I was told that it was a done deal last week, and I got a text today about this meeting, so it's a last-ditch opportunity to say what we have to say, okay? All right. And come check out Amersfoort Park. We have a Friends of Park in our neighborhood, and we'd like for your folks to know about that as well. There is green space. Thank you.
This calendar item number is closed. Calendar item number 3, 180042 ZMK 180043 ZRK.
These applications submitted by 1010 Pacific Street LLC pursuant to sections 197-C and 201 of the city charter for zoning map and text amendments to rezone the northeast section of a block fronting Classen Avenue and along Pacific Street for 440 feet. The zoning map amendment would change the properties from M1-1 to R7D and establish a 62-4 commercial overlay within the rezoning area. The zoning text amendment would designate the site as a mandatory inclusionary housing area. Such actions will facilitate the development of an 11-story mixed commercial community facility and residential building containing 154 dwelling units in Brooklyn Community District 8. Approximately 39 apartments would be affordable to households at an average of 60% median income, according to MIH Option 1. The development would provide approximately 7,056 square feet of commercial floor area, 4,378 square feet of area for community facility use, and accessory parking for 63 vehicles. The applicant would recruit a local arts nonprofit organization to operate the community facility space. Community Board 8 voted to disapprove this application with conditions on December 13, 2018. Would Richard Lobell, the representative for this application, please state your name and present the application for the record?
Good evening, Richard Lobell of Sheldon Lobell PC for the applicant. I'm joined today by Val Borah, the project architect, Dominic Recchia, who represents the applicant as well as Fan Baton from my office. And we're here today to discuss 1010 Pacific Street, which is an application for a property which initially began this process a number of years ago. So while the Crown Heights West rezoning rezoned much of the area to the south and southeast of this property into contextual zoning districts, this property is one of the properties that was included within the M1 area and is obviously within the M1 Crown District and study area, as has been proposed by Community Board 8. And while there are obviously a number of properties within this area that are that would seek redevelopment, this is a property which has been actually going through this process as a matter of public record since 2014 to 2015. So what I'd like to do is just introduce some of the basic zoning with regards to the proposal and then hand it off to Val Borah, who can discuss what is a rather innovative design which has been achieved through much consultation with the community and with the council member. So I really just would forward to the zoning district, and the property itself, which you can see in the highlighted area, is on a block which is zoned M11. So what's really to be noted about this? Pursuant to the Crown Heights West rezoning, many properties that were within the M11, although they were seen as being good candidates for redevelopment, were not actually included in the rezoning given the environmental and other legal diligence which would be required to convert them to residential use. So now we're in a time where, as an example, 1010 Pacific and the owners have come in and are seeking this private application. So the property itself is located within the red dotted area. The rezoning district itself actually would extend 440 feet from the nearby Classen Avenue, and this was a zoning district which was decided upon in consultation with city planning in order to give context to this area so that we wouldn't be just isolated with a portion of R70 C24 zoning in the middle of the block. And you can see from this diagram, the land use diagram, that the property itself, while located on the northeastern portion of the block, is part of a block where greater than 50% of the lots on this block are vacant or open uses. This is a block which really has not been redeveloped pursuant to the current M11. Of course, given the fact that M11 zoning limits the potential development on these sites to 1 FAR for commercial, of course a 2.4 for community facility. Within the zoning district boundaries itself, there's the subject lot, which amounts to roughly 25,000 square feet, as well as all are part of 11 additional lots. You can see from the zoning change map that, of course, we're currently zoned M11, and the proposal would draw this R70 C24 to cover this entirety of the rezoning area. I would further note that, of course, paired with an R7D, the C24 would mandate non-residential ground floor uses. And while the community board, I'm sure, will have many things to say with regards to the M Crown study area, as well as their proposals, in consultation with the city, this has been seen as being something which requires commercial use, which is seen as a potential job-generating use on the site. So I think probably what I would do now is to defer to Jay, who can discuss with more specifics the design choices that were made, as well as the physical layout of the building.
Thank you, Rich. My name is Val Borah, and I'm the principal of Studio V Architecture. We do a tremendous amount of different architectural projects and rezonings in all 5 boroughs, and especially here in Brooklyn. So we're very proud to be able to present to you today. I'll just briefly take you through the presentation. As you can see, even from this first perspective, the project is a little bit different. And we really tried hard, and it's very difficult to satisfy everyone, but we worked with the councilman, we worked with the community, we did a lot of outreach to different people, and we did our best to bring together many different components that would try to address many of the concerns we heard in this community, which included a strong desire for an art center, and we made a commitment to do something unusual and actually keep an historical building that is not landmark protected in any way, but to keep a portion of it and to actually commit to putting a community center and an art center within that. And also to do affordable housing, because of course any rezoning, that will be a requirement of it, and the way we've done the proposal we think will actually add a considerable amount of affordable housing. So briefly going through it, the arguments for density, as we all know, is that it must be transit-oriented, and the site is extremely transit-oriented. This shows some of the different components where it's quite close to the subway line, it's on a whole number of bus lines, it's on a number of bicycle lanes. So it's very important for us to address all issues of sustainability, as we've heard earlier tonight. So it is a very well-connected transit-oriented site, which is an excellent argument for density. But second, we really looked at the surrounding context and character of the community in order to make sure that we saw that there were other projects, and this is the project area here in red, that were commensurate in height and in scale with the proposals so that we knew what would be appropriate. And even though we were trying to do some special things like incorporate that old building and break the scale around it and do setbacks, we wanted to make sure it was commensurate with that. So these are other examples within a few blocks of us at 545 Prospect Place, at 880 Bergen Street, 505 St. Mark's Avenue, and at 892 Bergen Street. And you can see there are many buildings that are actually, if not taller, very commensurate in scale. And then on top of this, we made further articulations in our facade using interesting materials, incorporating the historic elements as well as the contemporary elements to break down the scale and really create something that we thought would be a much higher quality building. We didn't want a typical institutional building. Somebody used that phrase tonight. We wanted something that would be rich and more interesting. Finally, 4 more examples that were also larger or commensurate in scale. This one at 1030 16th Street, the one on the upper right at 1068 Fulton Street, very large, much larger than our project. Another one at 1078 Fulton Street, and another one at 1134. So it was important for us that we found the right mixture and character because we really think a lot about what is a community and how do we want to create something that fits into a scale. So Mr. Lobell went through some of the zoning aspects. There was a question on behalf of the community, and this is kind of tricky for us. They didn't want us to extend the zoning district. As a matter of fact, that was one of their recommendations in the project. This is a hard one for us because that's actually a city planning policy. So this is a case where city planning, unfortunately, disagrees with the community board's recommendations because they don't want to do spot zoning. And so our whole goal was, of course, to try to find a balance between the community's needs, but it's hard for us to go against city planning policy. And I think this is part of the issue as we've worked hard with the applicants for 4 years to try to find the right balance between the different concerns. And then finally, these are some of the details, and they were accurately displayed before. So we're looking at residential with about 154 dwelling units. Only 115 of these would be market rate, so there would be 39 with 25% of the dwelling units, of course, mandatory inclusionary housing. We are showing a commercial component of it, which is 7,600 square feet to activate the frontage and the edges and to provide jobs. The community facility that I don't know any other project quite like this in the community would be about 4,400 square feet, and we would incorporate that within that historic structure, which is actually an old stable that had been used originally for a bakery. And again, that has no landmark protection. We're not obligated to do that. It's just that we thought it was a beautiful structure and it was part of the history and character of this community, and we elected to save it and to include this public component to celebrate that part of the history. And then finally, there is parking, which of course is in the cellar, and that is 63 cars, which is self-parking. So this is just a diagram that kind of shows the articulation because we really wanted to do something special. You can see how the whole building mass conforms to the R7D zoning with required setbacks and so forth, and even street wall. But it kind of is sculpted and wraps around that old historic structure, and it was an unusual client. Our client actually is a builder as well as a developer, and he does long-lasting projects, wanted to do something special, and we were excited that he would allow us to do an unusual and special design like this. This is the cellar floor, which actually shows the parking plan with the different layouts. On the ground floor, we have the commercial area and the community facility. And you can see the various lobby entrances and the commercial yard to support the commercial spaces, which will create jobs. And on the upper floors, we have a whole range of different apartments. The community board had questions, and right away we got back to them and showed them what the different apartment types with a big range of studios, 1s, 2s, 3s, because a lot of different folks live in Brooklyn, and we need to have a range of different residence types. And this shows how they continue upward. there's something that's a little bit unusual. On top of the kind of building that we're electing to keep, we're also doing a small garden space up there. So we're creating kind of what we're calling an artist garden for the art center, and we think that would be really special. So these are the various floor plans, just going through each of them. This is a close-up, and so I would bring your attention, this to me is what's really interesting, where we can, again, articulate the facade, create this garden on top, elect to save this old building and restore it and bring it back into good shape and really do something special. So as I try to wrap this up, it's difficult to satisfy everyone because we live in New York and we live in complex communities with a lot of different people. So we tried hard to work with everyone to find the right balance where there'd be enough affordable housing, gardens and green elements, sustainable elements, but also keeping some of the history and trying to do something a little bit special. And that was really our goal. Today, when you go down this block, unfortunately, many of those manufacturing spaces today are empty. The few uses that are very active around us tend to actually be the residential uses, which are right across the street and next to us. Those are active, and those people did come out and talk with us. And we think that we could create something that would be very special for this community. Thank you, and we would be glad to answer your questions.
Okay, we have about 5 questions or so. Community Board 8 has updated M-Crown zoning recommendations for its M1-1 district based on the Department of City Planning's M-Crown framework, which contains this proposed rezoning. Please describe in what ways the requested zoning district and the extent of envisioned use are consistent with CB8's vision of M-Crown.
Good evening, Dominic Recchia. First, we've been at the M-Crown meetings for the last several years. I personally have been going, and we've been working and working with the community to hear what they had to say. The commercial spaces, we are committed to working extremely hard to find those tenants that conform to the uses that were laid out in the M-Crown rezoning. In addition to that, we are developing this cultural arts center for the community, which the borough president, the community board, the council member could identify those art group or groups to maintain that art center. And we are extremely concerned about the community board that we want to work with them, not against them. And like I said, we know what the uses that they prefer, and we will work extremely hard to see that we could fit in those uses into the commercial space and make it a priority to reach out to find tenants that conform to those uses.
So the requested C24 overlay, that goes up to use group 9. And within the M-Crown uses, there's only a handful of uses that are consistent with M-Crown in the use group 9. So in terms of working for the uses like retail uses and dining, restaurants, that's not consistent with the M-Crown. So within the limited palette of the C9, can you talk about those uses in terms of would that be okay to limit yourself to those uses?
Richard Lobell. So when the discussion was entered into to move forward with the R7D, there was an issue, which was that the R7D provides required commercial ground floor or non-residential uses on the ground floor, provided that it's partnered with a C24 district. To the extent that it was not, there would be no such requirements. So I'd say 2 things. The first is we understand that there's a limited compatibility between the C2 overlay and the underlying M uses. And to the extent that we can, we are continuing to work with the community, and particularly have discussed this with the council member, to say that we'd like to provide businesses that provide good paying jobs. So there is some overlap with the M-Crown uses, but we understand that is has limitations in scope. The other thing is that this is seen as part of a package, which is that as a matter of public record, this application has been in process since really prior to the 2015 statement by the CB8 M-Crown Subcommittee, which we, again, as Mr. Recchia said, are very involved with, have discussed with them in the room many times. And so, there's no artifice about this. This is a rezoning which has been out there for over 4 years. And so while we attempt to come as close as we can to the M-Crown uses, this is part of a development which we think brings certain things to the community that kind of add to the entirety of the development when considered as a whole, including the Arts Center, which is seen, particularly in conversations with Councilmember Cumbo, as a very important aspect of this development.
The next question is a three-part question. First is, what is the qualifying income range for prospective households based on household size? And the second is, what are the anticipated rents based on the number of bedrooms? And the third is, what is the distribution of units by bedroom size?
So the projected breakdown is given pursuant to option 1. And again, in our conversations with the council member, we've discussed MIH options, and for purposes of application, in this application, we're proceeding on option 1. So the unit breakdown is as follows. The total unit breakdown is 37 studios, 61 one-bedroom, 48 two-bedroom, and 8 three-bedrooms. So again, 37 studio, 61 ones, 48 twos, and 8 threes. The inclusionary portion of those units provides for roughly 10 studios, 15 one-bedrooms, 12 two-bedrooms, and 2 three-bedrooms. Again, 10 studios, 15 ones, 12 twos, and 2 three-bedrooms, which would provide a unit mix of roughly 24% studios, 40% for the inclusionary piece, 40% one-bedrooms, 31% two-bedrooms, and 5 three-bedrooms. And this is, I think, to the extent that the target amounts are 25% twos and 5% threes, we exceed those targets, with the proposed breakdown. The AMIs that we were discussing would basically fall within published guidelines pursuant to HPD. So at 60%, these would translate to roughly an AMI of 43,860 for a family of 1, 50,100 for a family of 2, 56,340 for a family of 3, and 62,580 for a family of 4. And then we have corresponding rents, but again, these are pursuant to published guidelines of HPD.
Okay, given community concerns regarding displacement and the prevalence of rent-burdened households, please identify what marketing strategies, such as designating one of this community's affordable housing nonprofits as the affordable housing administering agent, will be used in the tenant selection process in order to ensure the highest level of participation from Community District 8, especially those that are rent burdened or at risk of displacement. Would such marketing strategy start off with a financial literacy campaign to assist area residents in becoming lottery eligible?
Yes, we are going to be working with the local council member to identify a community group that she prefers to work with the community. And if the Borough President's office has any community groups in this area that you would like to recommend, we would take those recommendations and sit down with the council member and with your office and identifying a community group to address all of those issues.
And in terms of the marketing campaign to help outreach, what would be the views of the applicant in terms of starting off a financial literacy campaign to help residents become lottery eligible?
We would work with the local groups and with the council member's office, the Borough President's office, in holding a meeting to educate people how to fill out the applications and to give them a breakdown, and work with HPD to come in and give a whole workshop on how to apply for these affordable apartments.
Okay, the next question deals with sustainable and renewable energy. What consideration has been given, possibly in cooperation with the Department of Environmental Protection, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, NYSERDA, or NYPA, towards incorporating passive house design, solar panels, wind turbines, blue-green, or white roof covering and/or DEP rain gardens?
Well, thank you very much for the question. So the project has a number of sustainable features. First, as an architect, I'm a LEED accredited professional. Approximately 70–80% of our work actually involves significant sustainable features and various ratings. We participate in many of the programs such as LEED and Passive House. I can't say exactly where we'll end up on this project. Generally, we do LEED Silver as a base standard, but we'll have to work that out with the client. But I can tell you from a sustainability point of view, there's many features already incorporated in the design, which I'm excited to talk about. One of the most sustainable things one can do is actually reuse portions of buildings instead of tearing them down and adding them to landfills. So we've elected to keep actually some of the existing structures on the site which are not protected or required, but we want to do that. We also think that has other benefits, such as continuing the character and history of a neighborhood and combining it with new things. So I think that's important. Second, there are a series of stormwater features, which you identified in particular as important to the Borough President. We will do stormwater retention. We'll be doing that on the roof. We have a series of gardens that have been incorporated. Mr. Barrick early mentioned, and it's funny, it's something I'm very fond of, we could do bioswales within the tree pits. I think it's an excellent strategy. It's been pioneered in Brooklyn, and we do it on many of our projects. I sit on the Mayor's Waterfront Management Advisory Board, and so we're really at the forefront of dealing with sustainable features and stormwater treatment, and I think that would be an excellent feature to add. So I know there'll be many, many other features, especially with regard to energy and conservation and insulation, and those will all be incorporated into the design.
And the final question deals with maximizing good quality jobs, which is very important to the Borough President. Please outline what steps will be taken to ensure the inclusion and participation of minority and women-owned business enterprises and local business enterprises in the process of construction on this site.
Yes, we are committed to using MWBE contractors. We will work with the Borough President's Office and the council member and on the community board in identifying if any local MWBE contractors. In addition to that, our developer in the past has used MWBE contractors on their jobs in the past. And we are also have a meeting this coming Thursday, the 20th, with 32BJ, in sitting down with them. They reached out to us and identifying, said they would like to talk to us about 32BJ, their jobs, and we have a meeting this Thursday with them. But like I said, our contract in the past has worked with MWBE contractors. We will work with any MWBE contractors you like to recommend. In addition to that, we will definitely try and do our best to hire local residents to work on our construction site.
Thank you. That concludes the questions. Thank you very much. Okay, so the first speaker, we have Ethel, is this Tyus? Okay.
If you could just speak the question, it won't be a direct dialogue, but you can put the question on the record if you'd like, as part of your testimony.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ethel Tyus. I'm the Land Use Committee Chair for Brooklyn Community Board 8. I have one question before I start with the concessions that we're requesting from this applicant. The income bands were recited, but the rental rates for the various MIH apartments were not recited. If we could get that, that would be great. You mentioned you'd have 10 studios, 15 one-bedrooms, 12 two-bedrooms, and 2 two-bedrooms. What will the rents be for those apartments?
We're not going to have a dialogue now, but you can put the statement out there now so they heard you. I'm sure they'll find a way to get back to you.
I'm not quite sure about that, but in the interest of time, we did request what was shown tonight to be delivered to the board office regarding the number of square feet per apartment. We never got it, but we're seeing it here tonight. If we could get a copy of that, because this is not over. I'd just like to bring forward the concessions the Community Board 8 requested from the applicant for 1010 Pacific Street to change the eastern boundary of the area to be rezoned, to move it 230 feet west of Clausen Avenue, to amend the application to establish an MX district with mapping to M1-4 to reduce the non-residential parking requirement, and that the zoning envelope be amended from R7D to R7A pursuant to a binding commitment by the applicant to make residential development per R6A MIH with remaining bulk for non-residential use, including community facility use, and full ground floor lot coverage for non-residential use, excluding the lobby, core, and parking entrance. And in the absence of such a commitment, the rezoning be amended to R6A M14. We respectfully request the BP support for Brooklyn Community Board 8's M-Crown proposal. BCB 8 is seeking cooperation from the applicant for incorporation of the framework for the community's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is this Gib Facone? I'm sorry. Okay, all right.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gib Facone. Together with Ms. Tyus, I have been at work on helping to shepherd the CB8 M-Crown proposal over these last several years. I wanted to first just correct the record with respect, or clarify the record with respect to the sequencing of the Community Board's M-Crown proposal and the applicant's application. The Community Board began developing the financial models that went into the M-Crown proposal in public meetings beginning in July 2014. In November of 2014, one of those meetings was attended by Mr. Lobell, the architect for the applicant, who discussed the possibility, and again, the project was not known at that point, but he did discuss the possibility of private applicants coming forward and working collaboratively with the Community Board at that point to help speed the process along with the Department of City Planning. Mr. Recchia is also on record as having attended a number of our meetings beginning in March of 2015. And in April of 2015, the resolution that the Community Board originally passed for the M-Crown plan was, as I said, was passed by the Community Board. Now, taken together, what this means is the Community Board was at work on developing its guidelines at least a year before the applicants acquired this property, which was in November of 2015. I think it would have been very helpful to work collaboratively with the applicants in developing their proposal, but I would not characterize the discussions we've had with them as being that type of collaboration. So the Community Board at this stage, in the recommendations that Ms. Tyus just read, is interested in trying to limit the collateral impact of this application on the rest of the proposed M-Crown rezoning. This is why we've called for the rezoned area to be reduced. This is why we have called for the building envelope to be reduced as well, consistent with the current state of dialogue with the Department of City Planning. There's a concern on my part, just speaking for myself, that if the application was approved at the density that's being proposed, the speculation that's already taking place in this zone would be much exacerbated. This is it's larger bulk than the rest of the zone is likely to be recast as, and we're already seeing land cost, tremendous pressure on land cost in the zone, and that makes it more difficult to deliver the types of benefits in terms of accessible jobs through uses in the rezoned property that the Community Board hopes for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dan Marks?
Good evening. My name is Dan Marks. I've been working and living in the surrounding area for the past 7 years. I'm here to give my support for this project. There's a real need for residential units in the market, especially affordable units, which this project will provide. Furthermore, this neighborhood, along with city planning, has been speaking for years about a broader rezoning, which I also support, but there's no set timeline as to when it will be complete. I think it's important for projects like this to not only test the market, but prove to future developers that you can build a successful mixed-use project in this part of the neighborhood. Look, for example, at the Lightstone project that was built in Gowanus years prior to the upcoming rezoning. That project has been a tremendous success and is giving confidence to developers waiting for the rezoning to happen. Once it happens, I expect development to start soon after. Finally, I wanted to comment on the uses in this project. As a board member of 2 nonprofit organizations, one of which is an art organization, I fully support adding the community facility space that's planned and do believe there will be demand for that type of space here. I do have reservations about adding other commercial uses in this project. If this building were located on a corner, I think ground floor retail and commercial space would make more sense. But I don't think there's enough demand to warrant mid-block retail space, especially if there are restrictions regarding the uses. While multi-floor office has done well in this neighborhood, look at 1000 Dean for example, office tenants tend to shy away from ground floor space. Residents also don't want to live above industrial type uses for quality of life issues and general safety related to loading zones. And retail stores will need a lot more foot traffic in order to make it. And I believe that about 7,500 square feet is a lot of square footage to lease. So I would suggest adding more residential and therefore more affordable units to avoid having empty ground floor spaces and activating that space. Thank you for your time and opportunity to share my thoughts. Have a good day.
Thank you. Princess Ben James, CB8.
Hello, good evening. My name is Princess Ben James. I'm a member of CB Board 8, and I have been a resident of this community for the past 32 years. I know changes are great. We do expect changes, but my problem, changes on the back of the community and the resident of the community, it's a problem. I'm a homeowner in that neighborhood. My husband has been driving around. He have drove around one time for the past an hour trying to find park in my neighborhood. Apartments in my neighborhood, when I moved in, it was 2 bedrooms, $600, $700 a month. Now a studio apartment is going for over $2,000 in my neighborhood. So when they talk about affordable, out of 154 apartments, there are only 32 affordable. So where the other people gonna go? There's 154. They can do better than 39 affordable apartments. Okay, they're having 154 apartments, but there are only 63 parking. The last time I did my math, there are 91 apartments would be without parking. Some apartments, there are 2 cars. Where these cars are going to park? It's disrupting our community, and like I said, changes are good, but changes should not be coming on the back of the resident who has been there. And most of the people who are working on this project, would they be able to live in these apartments when they're finished? No. So yes, we are having developments in our community. It's great, but please let them consider people who are living in the community who would like to stay in the community when it comes to affordable. Thank you.
Thank you. Cassie Carrillo, 32BJ.
Good evening. My name is Cassie Carrillo, and I work for 32BJ. I'm here tonight on behalf of my union and our members, over 80,000 property service workers who clean and maintain buildings like the ones being discussed tonight. As you know, New York's economy is hard on working families, and we believe that in order to create a more equitable New York, developers should commit to providing prevailing wage building service jobs. We estimate that this development will create about 8 property service jobs. These jobs should help uplift working families and give workers dignity. Currently, there is no commitment to provide prevailing wage building service jobs at this site. However, the developers seeking this rezoning have reached out to 32BJ for a conversation and will keep the borough president updated on our discussions. We respectfully request that you urge the developer to commit to good jobs that pay prevailing wages as part of your recommendation for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Okay, calendar item number 3 is closed. Calendar item number 4, 160175 ZMK, 160176 ZRK.
These applications submitted by 1050 Pacific LLC pursuant to Sections 197-C and 201 of the City Charter for zoning map amendments to rezone the western section of a block extending from Classen Avenue for 225 feet between Dean and Pacific Streets. The zoning map amendment would change the properties from M1-1 to M1-4 R7A and establish a special mixed-use district within the rezoning area. The zoning amendment would designate the site a mandatory inclusionary housing area. Such actions would facilitate the development of an 8-story mixed-use building containing 103 dwelling units in Brooklyn Community District 8. Approximately 33 apartments would be affordable to households at an average of 80% of area median income, according to MIH Option 2. The development would provide approximately 15,800 square feet of commercial use on the ground floor and accessory parking for 42 vehicles and 54 bicycles in the cellar for both commercial and residential uses. Community Board 8 voted to approve this application with conditions on December 13, 2018. Would Richard Lobell, the representative for this application, please state your name for the record and present this application?
Richard Lobell of Sheldon Lobell PC for the applicant. Good evening. So the application before the Borough President's office this evening is 1050 Pacific Street. This is an application which seeks a rezoning to R7A, which is paired with an M14 district. In addition, we would seek an Appendix F amendment to map the area. The area would be mapped with both Option 1 and Option 2, although the applicant here has selected Option 2. So, again, by way of a brief recitation, the applicant's property is located within the circled area. The property is a through lot and an interior lot. It amounts to roughly 23,000 square feet of floor area and is located to the east of Classen between Dean and Pacific Streets. You can see the area here highlighted in red, and this rezoning district boundary would travel 225 feet from Classen Avenue. The total lot area involved in the rezoning is roughly 49,000 square feet. The properties located within the rezoning area are a mix of properties. I'd say that there's roughly 3 properties are vacant. The other properties are from 1 to 3 stories, relatively low FAR, consistent with M11 zoning. So again, you can see the lot here. It's a through lot between Pacific and Dean Streets with a somewhat irregular floor plate. And pursuant to the zoning change map, again, the rezoning district boundary would be drawn 225 feet from Classen. And to reiterate with regards to the zoning district boundary, of course, the applicant sets the zoning district boundary in the application pursuant to conversations with city planning, but of course this is done to ensure that there is context here, to ensure that this does not constitute a spot zoning. Here the applicant drew the district boundary to Classen Avenue to incorporate these underbuilt properties which would benefit from the subject rezoning. We note here that this is an R7A district, which permits a 4.6 FAR. As we discussed previously, and you can see to the lower right of the zoning map here, much of the area included in the Crown Heights West rezoning in 2013 was rezoned to R6A, R6B, and R7A. Indeed, roughly 18 blocks or portions thereof were rezoned to the R7A. Interestingly, that R7A is different from R7A primarily in being an inclusionary housing district, which provides voluntary inclusionary housing and would allow for 20% affordability, whereas, of course, pursuant to the 2016 Zoning for Quality and Affordability Amendments, we would be included within mandatory inclusionary housing and would need to provide a minimum of 25%. Of course, the applicant here has chosen 30% at 80% AMI. So you can see just briefly a montage of the surrounding area, including the property itself, which currently houses truck parking, is an underutilized lot really for vacant open uses, which we feel would greatly benefit the area should we proceed with the proposal. And so I think what I would do briefly is just introduce Paul Jensen from the team. But prior to that time, I would note that there's two things we would discuss here. The first is that the project itself involves a mixed-use building with two 8-story portions on each of Pacific and Dean Streets and a 1-story portion in between. The 1-story portion actually maintains an interior courtyard that would provide open space, a green area for the local community. This was seen by the community board as being a large benefit to the surrounding area. This is a space which would be used in conjunction with the retail use on the ground floor. And so while this is an R7A district which permits residential, the pairing with the M district allows for commercial ground floor use. The intended use of the commercial ground floor would be for over 15,000 square feet of commercial uses. And coupled with the interior courtyard, this would amount to, I think, over 20,000 square feet of non-residential uses. We're very happy that the community board sought, after the deliberative process, chose to conditionally approve this rezoning. Having been involved with the M1 Crown discussions for some time, we found this to be a real victory for all the parties involved. It's potentially a very useful building for the area. And I would just add that the nature of the commercial spaces here are such that we seek to attract local retail. So this is not intended to be larger commercial establishments. You can see that particularly along the commercial corridor, these are all limited square footages, oftentimes amounting to 400 to 500 square feet, which essentially would encourage local retail, and we hope to really cultivate local businesses to locate here. So I think I would just briefly just hand it over to Paul just for a brief discussion of the building height and some of the layouts.
Paul Jensen from the developers team. So in designing this building, the proposal, we looked at a lot of items that we heard from the community board own rezoning proposal, and we worked to include, or we looked behind the purposes of what the community board was looking for, which is mainly good jobs from the retail and affordable housing. So the first floor commercial space, we split it up in 10 commercial spaces, which would promote the type of uses that the community board wanted to see. And we estimate that our first floor would generate approximately 50 jobs. The same way, we also looked at the annual average traffic on the streets. Dean Street has about 8,000 cars every day, so we designed the entrance to our parking area to go in from Pacific Street, which has a lower traffic. We also, I heard the comments and the questions for the other applications that we had regarding sustainability, and so on that front, we have many areas that we are considering for this building. Number one, we plan from the 68 parking spaces that we'll have in the building, eight will be electric charging stations. And also will position those electric spots close to the entrance, so it's in another way to promote sustainability. We're also looking on hot water, on energy conservation, on a number of ways. One, to design the building with better insulation that the code requires, which will reduce the energy cost, as well as the hot water from the building. We are looking at options to use a new technology, which is like a heat pump, which requires less electricity to generate hot water. With respect to water conservation, we're looking at green fixtures, which consume less water, as well as to retain stormwater on the roof, and possibly using some gray water for the gardens. We have 6 outdoor spaces, different outdoor spaces, 2 on the main tower, 1 the interior park, like a little oasis to get away from the hustle and bustle. We spoke about the annual average daily traffics. Atlantic Avenue, which is 1 block over, they have about 40,000 cars. So to have this little park shielded by the building inside in the inner core would provide a nice, quiet space.
So we'd be happy to answer any further questions.
Okay, so most of these questions are the same from your previous application. Sure. Community Board 8 has updated M-Crown zoning recommendations for its M1 district based on the Department of City Planning's M-Crown framework, which contains this proposed rezoning. Please describe in what ways the requested zoning district and the extent of envisioned use are consistent with CB8's vision for M-Crown.
So we'd note that this application pairs an M14 with an R7A, which allows us to essentially use the proposed space for uses which are included within the M-Crown district study. And so I know the Community Board has expressed a preference that we devote, I believe, 0.25 FAR of the commercial uses for such uses. With the understanding that the applicant has previously discussed using this for local maker space, which may have an accessory component, but trying to get those applicants in to occupy the space.
Okay, and regarding the intended affordable housing units, just take us through the qualifying income range for prospective households based on household size. What are the anticipated rents based on the number of bedrooms, and what is the distribution of units by bedroom size?
So interestingly, the project has roughly 103 residential units. Of these, 33 units would be intended to be affordable. But fairly unique to a project of this nature, the project is currently designed with 100% 2-bedroom apartments. We view this as being beneficial on several levels. The first being, of course, that it really gets the unit sizes up. While many applications obviously include studios and 1-bedrooms, this allows for uniform 2-bedrooms, which, in addition to raising the average unit size, also provides what amounts to a seamless tenancy in that all the units here are 2-bedrooms, and so your neighbors are 2-bedrooms, and you're affordable, and they are market rate, and these are all all the units amount to similar layouts. With that understanding and with the entirety of this application, we did discuss with the council member that it's the preference of the really kind of in order to put together this particular mix and this development, it's fairly strong preference of the applicant to maintain 80% AMI. So again, while these are average rates and rents, I would just say for 80% of AMI, for a family size of 3, you're looking at an average income of $75,000 plus or minus, as well as for a 2-bedroom, between 70% and 90%, you're looking at rents ranging from $1,585 to $2,200 plus or minus, with 80% average being at $1,820.
Okay, the next question deals with the community concerns regarding displacement. What marketing strategies, such as designating one of this community's affordable housing nonprofits as the affordable housing administering agent, will be used in the tenant selection process in order to ensure the highest level of participation from Community District 8? And the second part would be, would such marketing strategy start off with a financial literacy campaign?
So the applicant has sat down with Majority Leader Cumbo to discuss this project. She did express a preference for using a local nonprofit as the administering agent. The applicant has no prior relationships in that regard, so we're happy to accommodate that. Again, to the extent that that involved a local literacy campaign and public outreach within the local community board with regards to marketing campaigns, we are happy to comply with that. We view it as an advantage to the project to be able to use someone on the ground who is familiar with the local Crown Heights area.
Okay, and the next question deals with renewable and sustainable energy, and I know you spoke on this a little bit. You talked about considering electric charging stations, energy conservation, any consideration for incorporating passive house design or solar panels?
We are definitely considering to exceed the energy code in terms of envelope insulation and other green Energy Star appliances and other components, technologies that are available.
But would you look into, for example, solar panels or blue-green roofs?
We would look into it.
And the last question deals with the Borough President's commitment to maximizing good quality jobs. Please outline what steps will be taken to ensure the inclusion and participation of minority and women-owned business enterprises and local business enterprises in the process of construction on this site.
Currently, we are using several of our trade contractors are minority MWBE businesses that we use on all of our projects. We also have a number of jobs in operating the building. Not all of these jobs are particularly in the building, but such as elevator maintenance and monitoring, fire alarm monitoring. So all those other, they cost for the building operation, they cost the same as a job, but we reached out to, but they are not on-site jobs. So we reached out to some of the local businesses that can fill those jobs as well.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our questions. Ethel Tias? Okay. Is that, I forgot, Gib Bocconi? Okay.
Thank you. Good evening again. The Brooklyn Community Board 8 voted on December 13th to give conditional support to this project with the following stipulations. The first was the western boundary of the area to be rezoned, be moved to 100 feet east of Classen Avenue and exclude the lots on Classen Avenue as part of the rezoning. Two, the applicant make a binding commitment to develop the residential component of the project per R6A MIH with remaining bulk for non-residential use with full lot, ground floor lot coverage for non-residential use, not including lobby, core, and parking entrance. And should such a commitment not be received, the rezoning be amended to R6A M14, and that the application be amended to select MIH option 1 at 60% AMI. And finally, that 0.25 of the ground floor be reserved for light industrial and artisan uses as provided in the M-Crown communications. I would like to say that it was the understanding at the Land Use Committee meeting and at the general meeting that the applicant was in agreement with respect to making a binding commitment to develop R6A MIH with full lot coverage of the ground floor for non-residential use. Also that the applicant was in agreement to amend the application to select MIH option 1. So I was perhaps a little bit surprised this evening to hear that the owner continues to express a strong preference for option 2 at 80% AMI. Nevertheless, the board does believe that this application, with those stipulations in mind, does reflect the vision of the M-Crown plan, and in that respect is willing to support it in advance of the larger M-Crown rezoning. Thank you.
Zamir Khan, 32 BJ. Excuse me.
Good evening. My name is Zamir Khan. I'm a member of 32BJ. Give me a second. I'm just trying to figure out this mic. All right. I've been a member of 32BJ for the past 9 years, and I'm here on behalf of my union to express some of our concerns regarding the development of 1050 Pacific. As you have heard, 32BJ believes that a key element to creating a more equitable and sustainable New York economy for working families are good property service jobs that pay family-sustaining wages and give workers access to mobility and security. We estimate that this project will generate 5 building service jobs, and they will be filled by local members of the community and should help uplifting working families. We have reached out to the developers of 1050 Pacific in hopes that they will commit to good building-paying jobs and that they will pay prevailing wages and give workers dignity. Unfortunately, they have yet to follow up to discuss the commitment. As of now, we're concerned about the impact that this project will have on building service workers and the surrounding community. We respectfully request that you urge the developer to commit to prevailing wage property service jobs as part of your recommendation for the project. Thank you for your time, and thank you for having us this evening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak that has not spoken on calendar number 4? The hearing on these items is now closed. Thank you for participating in this public hearing. Borough President Adams will review the applications we heard today and will soon submit his recommendations to the City Planning Commission. Borough President Adams would like to take this opportunity to remind you that the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on these items. The hearing is now adjourned. Borough President Adams would like to remind those viewing on the website that timely comments can be submitted by email to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. Thank you.